All right, here we are on September 6th, 2020. I'm working on a 2003 Honda Accord. I was told by the mechanic that the outer tie rod on the right side and the inner tie rod are both shot. Not sure how they knew about the inner tie rod, maybe just by it's not moving a lot. He said the boot's still on. Doesn't look like it's been moved, so somehow apparently they could tell that the inner tie rod was shot. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and replace them both. And I'm going to try to do a very short video with just some quick snippets of the different steps. It should be noted that I've done outer tie rod several times on my other cars. I've never replaced an inner tie rod. So it'll be a first time, but hopefully I'll be able to capture some on video. So the first thing we did is we just obviously took off the tire, jacked it up, then I put a block under it because I don't have 4 or 5 different jacks to use. And now I'm taking off, I'm going to start here by taking off this outer tie rod. I've got the cotter pin that I've unfolded. You got to unfold it and it's going to slide out. Then I'm going to take off the castle nut, and then hopefully I'll be able to knock this outer tie rod back up through the back side of the knuckle here. It just slides down through a hole in this. So I'm going to do that next. We'll see how that goes and we'll go from there. Just one other quick thing, when you're working on these nuts and these different parts, I usually like to just spritz it with a little WD-40, try to work off some of the gum and the dirt that's gotten up in there, maybe loosen it up a little bit. I spritz it and then let it sit a little bit. So just wanted to put that little extra tip in there. Okay, here we are. Took out this cotter pin, got the castle nut off. I was able to knock this up. I just banged on it at the bottom of the bolt with a hammer. Notice I also decided to get in and turn the wheel out, turn the steering wheel to the left, and it kind of pulled everything out for me a little bit, made it easier to get to. I knocked on the bottom of this, it popped out. Yeah, the outside tie rod is shot. You can see the gasket is blown. It's all crushed. There's no grease in there, it doesn't feel like, although I think it's already, you don't need grease in that. Anyway, knocked it out from the bottom. You can do one of two things here. You can just unscrew this one at this point with your hand. It's going to unscrew off the inner tie rod. Or this nut, which locks down on this, you actually need to, if you were just going to take off the outer tie rod, you need to loosen this nut. Again, I blasted it with some WD-40 and let it sit. Then I got my wrench on it, and it's pretty tight. It's tightened up on there so it doesn't lose the alignment. And on the bottom of the wrench, then on the handle, I just took my hammer and tapped on the wrench. And that got this tapped, hit it, whatever you need to do to get it loose. Anyway, that nut will then back off and then allows you to move this up. Okay, to take off the outer tie rod, one thing to remember to do here is as you unscrew it off the bolt on the inner tie rod, count the number of turns, full turns, it takes you to get this inner tie rod off. The reason you want to do that is when you put the new one back on, you want to have it in almost the identical distance and connectivity so that your alignment is pretty close. So when I was turning this off, I counted 16 turns and I was able to get the inner tie rod off. So I'm just going to remember that number 16. So when I put the new one on, I'll turn it on 16 times. Now up here, I have a little bit of a clip, which should be pretty easy to get off. I'm going to get up here with my pliers. It's kind of a pinch clip, and I'm going to squeeze it down. Actually, it came right off. Now I'm going to get in here and try to pull this boot off. There is another clip up on the inside that I've got to get to. I'm not going to video it. You can probably see it if you have a shop light like this as you work on yours. It's up in there, and I have to get that band off also. And then this rubber boot should slide off the inner tie rod. I'm kind of laying on my side down here looking up underneath there, and that strap I was telling you about on the back, I'm going to show you where it is. It's that round strap right there, and it was tight, but what I was able to do was to take a long flathead screwdriver, sorry about that, this one right here, and there's a little clip, that little opening right there. I could see that opening. So that little opening in the clip, so I slid the screwdriver in there, and I just kind of pried it away, and it popped loose the little teeth that were holding that strap. So now this metal strap is loose. It was tight, like a zip tie, tight all the way around that boot, so it wasn't going to come off. Now that that strap's loose, watch this. Boot slides right off. Now, here is the inner tie rod and the end of the steering here. So now I've got to get this off, and I'll show you the tool. And that is, look at that. Look how sloppy that is. It really is shot. No wonder it won't hold a alignment. It's bad. So I'm going to show you the tool I bought for like $14. It's a special tool. It doesn't cost much. But I bought a tool that's going to grip onto this. I might not even need it. I may be able to get on there with my big wrench. I'm going to try that first. Alright, I'll be back in just a minute. Okay, a couple quick things. Here's the new inner tie rod. Notice this particular one for the 03 Accord that I have has this little washer on the end. It has two little teeth, and I'm sure those are going to slide into a slot on the inside of the steering there. But notice this plate overlaps a bit with the flat spot on the joint here. When I looked into the old one, you can see the plate is right here, but what was interesting was they had, when they tightened it on, they had tapped up the edge of the metal. See the metal ring, how it's past the edge? They'd tap that up like a little ear or a flap around the flat part. So I don't know if I needed to or not, but I took a flathead screwdriver and I just kind of knocked that loose so that it wasn't holding the tie rod from turning if those teeth were locked in on the inside. Then actually I was able to take this wrench, get on the flat spot on this one here, and again I was able to lock onto it and tap it with a hammer and knock it loose. But after I did that, and I think this is why you normally need the tool, I ran out of turning space because I'm hitting the knuckle and the control arm and stuff. So I whipped out my handy dandy, this new tool I bought. Now really looks kind of familiar. It's just like a locking bolt, but the interesting thing is it has these teeth. So what's going to happen is I'm going to screw down on top of this. This is going to slide up on the bottom. I'm going to tighten down the nuts onto these arms, and because it has these teeth, it is going to grip the inner tie rod, and then through the end of this I'll put my breaker bar or something, and I'll show you once I get it attached, but that's going to allow me to turn this inner tie rod off. I just had to slip in this funny story because in all the years I've worked on cars, I've never had this happen to me before. I was in here turning stuff with my hand and must have caught my finger on some little sharp part. I got a band-aid on it now, but the funny thing was I looked down. I always wear a pair of rubber gloves just to try to keep the grease from getting too terribly bad. I can still grip it through the rubber gloves. And I looked down, and the whole end of my rubber glove on my middle finger, it's all red. And it's all the way red up to the knuckle on the glove, and I'm like, what is going on? And I slide it off, and basically the whole end of the glove around my middle finger, the end of the glove was full of blood. I didn't even realize I'd nicked it, and somehow I nicked it. It didn't break the rubber open, but the whole end of the glove filled up with blood. I thought that was kind of funny and gross all at the same time. Anyway, I'll survive, but I thought I would share that funny story. Okay, check this out. So you know I showed you the tool. So here's the tool installed. I slid it up over, slid it together, and actually I saw people saying it's hard to get it tightened down, but I have this little torque, battery operated torque wrench here. So I just popped it a few times with this to tighten up those bolts. It tightened it down around there, and then notice again the same connector. Sorry about that. Oops. I'll splice that out. This fits right in there. And I popped it a few times with this little handheld torque wrench. It's not super strong. And all of a sudden, it started turning. It just started turning. And guess what? It's going to come right off of there. There it is. It's off. All right, I'll come back to you in just a minute. You'll remember we noticed that this new washer has those little teeth on it. And look at where I'm getting ready to attach that. Those teeth are going to slide right in there. They're going to keep that from spinning. Look at that. Oops, not filming it right. You can see the teeth there. Put that back together. That's going to slide up there. And those little tabs are going to slide right into that spot. Okay, here we are back, and this is the new inner tie rod. I put a little of the, this is the blue Loctite glue. Here's the old one, but just to show you, but I put a little glue on the thread here. I screwed it in as far as I could, and I got that little metal washer with the little tabs aligned. So when I screwed it down tight, those tabs are aligned correctly. Then I took my tool, clamped it back down around the inner tie rod, used my little torque wrench. I think you could use a breaker bar on that if you needed to, with an extension. Tightened that down as good as I could there. And then those little tabs, you remember those tabs were bent. Actually, I can show them to you. Here's the old one. See how they were bent up a little bit? So on the new one, what I did, I didn't have a really special kind of tool to do it with, but I took my pliers. I took my adjustable pliers and I kind of grabbed the top of the tab and just pulled it down this way, pulled it towards me, and it actually bent that tab down onto the flat spot on the inner tie rod. So I think I'm pretty good there. Now, with the inner tie rod that I got, they sent me a packet of this this grease. It's pretty thick grease. So I'm going to pack it in and around that tie rod joint real good. And then I'm going to take the boot, which I already showed you slid off. I'm going to slide this boot back up, and this time when I reinstall it, I'm going to put 2 zip ties and tie that real tight up around, and you can actually kind of see the ridge. It needs to go up and around this area here to keep this, it goes up on that lip right there to keep that all clean. All right, we're back. We have the boot installed again, slid it up in there. I put I had a longer zip tie, so put one zip tie around it and left it a little bit loose, slid it up over that little lip, and was able to get in there with my needle nose and get it right on the other side of the little nut on that zip tie, and I just, as I cranked it and twisted it, it pulled the last few teeth of the zip tie back through, and it's holding pretty good. I went ahead and put another one on top of it just to double it up. And then here you can see, you'll notice there's that little squeeze clamp that I took off with the pliers. It's now installed back again, holding the boot up against the inner tie rod. I did take that packet of grease and packed it in around the inner tie rod joint. So that was all packed in, and just slid the boot back on top. So now I'm getting ready to reinstall the outer tie rod. It came with a new nut, and there's the locking pin. So we will work on putting this back on. Actually, you gave me 2 of them, so I have 2 of these. I'm gonna turn that all the way on. remember, when I put this new tie rod in, I gotta go on 16 turns. So I'm gonna do that next. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. It's about where I need to be. Now, tighten this nut back up so that it comes right up flush. And I'm going to put a little pressure on that and turn that down tight, and that will keep this from moving. Then I just need to align it. See my inner ball joints working. I'm going to align it over here and get it put back down through the knuckle here. I have my new castle nut. Get that tightened up. We should be in good shape. That's a brand new boot there. I think we'll be in good shape. Feels like I need to put a little grease in that. Probably will do that too once I get it in. Just as a quick reminder, if your outer tie rod, the bolt is not lining up perfectly with the hole in the arm here, you can actually grab this wheel. You can turn it left and right. So just grab the disc with 2 hands, and you can shift it this way until it gets to the spot you need it to be to line this up. Now, it's probably a little bit easier because I'm in the garage here, not out on a driveway or something like that, but I was able to turn this and line it up pretty easily. You may have to use a steering wheel possibly if you can't turn it by hand. But anyway, I've got it lined up. I've got the castle nut started. I'm going to tighten it up, and then we'll put the cotter pin through there. Okay, here we are, final product. New outer tie rod, cotter pin, castle nut, tighten down. There it is. Got the nut. I tightened this up. Back turned it to tighten up on the outer tie rod. You already saw, we got the inner tie rod on. Tightened up good. Got the boot back up to keep that clean. Keep the dirt and grit off of it. Everything's tightened up. I'm going to put the tire back on, and we're going to run it down to the shop, and I'm going to have them do alignment on it, and we should be good to go. Hope this was fast enough for you. I know I didn't film every little step, so I'm kind of assuming you'll be able to figure out a few of the simpler points. Just wanted to capture the highlights for you, just so you could see it and get your mind wrapped around what's going to happen when you do this job. I was quoted again about 500, between 500 and 600, I don't remember exactly how much. And I think the parts, you can get the higher quality parts for about 40 bucks a piece. I got a standard part which ran me about 25 a piece, I think, to 30. So I have about roughly $60 of parts in there. And then I actually got the tool that I showed you, which I'll be able to have if I ever decide to do this again. That only cost me about $14. I didn't get the fancy set for 80 bucks. I got the $14 one. It worked fine. So I'm into this whole job for about $75, and probably beginning to end, I've been working on this between 2 and 3 hours. But I was taking breaks, got something to drink and snack in between. So I think you probably could knock it out in an hour and a half to 2 hours if you went straight for it, stayed with it, maybe less. Hope this helps. Thanks. Bye.